Med Rep podcast number 2. What we're going to be talking about today is the Rep Rant, which is simply just that. We're just going to be having discussions with representatives who've, sold in the medical space, have had those wins, have had those horror stories. We figure why not start with us, because we've all carried the bag. We've all done the corporate gig, and not all of us. Chaz hasn't, and it's because he's too young. And then we made the decision to kind of go into the independent space.
We saw the light.
We saw the light. So we kind of talk about that transition, talk about that story, because I think some people can relate to that. But we figured before we became grown-ups, and I'm not really sure.
You're not a grown-up. No,
yet.
Definitely not.
We talk about the worst jobs we ever had, because I think a lot of some of those experiences have actually translated into other careers. So let's talk about like pre-grown up. Like, what was the worst job that you ever had?
Yeah, so I'll go first. So the worst job I ever had, I was a short order cook at Friendly's. You remember Friendly's?
The Fribble.
For you that don't know about it, it's it's kind of like a diner type restaurant that serves ice cream, known for their burgers and stuff. So anyhow, I was a short order cook. It was the first summer. I think I was 16 years old. Okay. And while all my friends are out having a good time in the summertime, I'm flipping burgers in the back, sweating to death. But the real bad part of it is that the fryer was kind of an older fryer, and I'd constantly get splashed with hot oil. One time I actually got a pretty bad burn on my arm, so not a great job. I only did that for about 3. It's funny, right, Chess? Yeah, it's real funny.
Thinking, like, what do you think OSHA thinks about what you just said? I mean,
I don't know. It was a long time ago. Anyhow, that's the worst job I ever had.
Did you get a discount at Fribbles when you were there?
Yeah, discount on half-gallon ice cream. It's got like a 25% discount. So for like a half-gallon ice cream home.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That might be worth the
not
the
worth
fryer burns.
Not worth the 3rd-degree burns. Trust me, definitely not.
What about you, Chaz?
I actually wasn't even compensated for the worst job I ever had. My 5th year in college, we basically you get 4 years of scholarship, right, and then it runs out. Well, problem with playing ball in college is you don't ever finish in 4 years. So that 5th year you got to pay up. So it's either go borrow money from the government or go be a volleyball referee or work for another sport of the school, right? So on campus, I got chosen to be the volleyball referee. So basically, they hand you a flag, no training at all. You're standing on the corner. The head judge is there. He's trained. He comes from the conference or whatever.
And these are real college games?
Oh yeah, these are the real games. Yeah, like conference games, titles, etc. So basically, your job is to either call in or out, right? And then if it hits it hits tip, then you give a little wave, right? So he'll call most of the game as in the head judge, but then if there's one on the line or something that's questionable, then he'll look at you. Well, I was just told in or out, and this was it, right? So, he'll look at you. I don't know, 5,000, 10,000 people in the auditorium or whatever we were playing in, the gymnasium, and then it's in or out. Well, what they don't tell you is that their player reaction, like you're right there, right? Like she'll dive for a ball, and you go, in, and I'm at the school, against the school I'm going against, right?
Yeah,
so,
I didn't think of that.
So now you're talking about
you see these people on
home field advantage.
No question. And anytime I could give one to the home team, I would. But flat out times where there was just out, I've got to go out.
Yeah.
But then it's just a absolute mauling. Grandmas in the stands, just dog cussing you for going in or out with the home team. And anyways, wouldn't even pay. I did get my 5th year paid, thank God. But no compensation for the worst job ever for me.
Wow, that's tough. Did you ever catch any flack after the game from somebody walking down the hall?
No, I would sprint to my car. It was one of the things where the game's over.
You ever get beat up by one of the players?
No. Yeah. They could definitely beat me up.
Yeah,
but I never got to the confrontation point. No question.
Wow, that's terrifying.
You?
It's funny. Remember, I reffed in college. Actually,
I do remember. Actually, I did.
I did. Yeah, I reffed flag football, and it was intramurals and basketball. But
I thought you were going to talk about your gym job that you got up at like 3:30 in the morning for.
Actually, that was a pretty bad job.
This is the one where you went to sleep with the clothes on.
Yeah. Okay, so basically, it was a matter of efficiency. Really, that's why I did that. Basically, I had a job as a personal trainer in my sophomore year of college. And, you could work as a fry cook at Fribble, or, selling Fribbles. You could work for the school minimum wage, or you could be a personal trainer where you would get tips and you're compensated pretty well. So I got my, my certification, and I worked for this one gym that was in a strip mall, and I was there to open. Now, opening was you had to be there at 5 because it opened at 5:30, and that was your first client. And I only worked 3 hours. I think it was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That was also my busiest class schedule. So I had to come back. I'd get back at 8, and my first class was at 8:30, and I figured, hey, why don't I take a nap?
What time do you get? About 10 o'clock?
That was the challenge. So when you're in college, for those who had the dorm room experience, you go to bed about 3 in the morning. So when you go to bed at 3 in the morning and you get up at 5, you can imagine there's a little bit of a challenge. So basically I take a nap in the morning. I'd take another one midday, and then I'd take another nap. Basically, it was just a series of naps. I was about 2 hours, but I put all my clothes on. I had more hair then, like wasn't the buzz cut, and I would kind of with the hair dryer.
I remember,
I remember
the hair dryer. Yeah,
the whole hair thing. And I would just lay there like I was in a casket because I didn't want to move and mess up my hair or wrinkle my shirt, right? So then I would wake up. I'd borrow your car.
You would. Yeah, I had a couple of nice surprises in my car. Yeah,
I'd leave egg rolls and other things inside of his car if I went out to dinner. And then I'd go to work, come back, take a nap. But the problem was I wouldn't wake up till about 2 in the afternoon because I was really exhausted. And once I got that you're failing out of college notice, I decided maybe it was time for a change in career. Yeah.
I'd say so.
So those were the worst jobs. Any other ones that are notable you can think of other than that? No?
Not off the top of my head, no.
So, with that said, obviously we've all had some kind of crummy experiences. I'm sure everyone can relate to that and can think of a few themselves. But, we decided to grow up and move into the real world. And we made decisions to kind of go in corporate America. I know I did. Joe, I know you did. And Chaz, you took a little bit of a different route. So, why, and I guess, actually, I'll start with you, Joe. Like, why did you decide to work for a larger corporation? How long were you in there? And what was the good and the bad of it, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I went out first off to work for a larger corporation is, first off, they were the first one to offer me a job. So it was kind of opportunity and kind of fell into it. But, to be honest with you, there's pluses and minuses to corporate America, right? And I kind of found that out for myself. So, you have the security of working for a larger corporation. You have the resources. You have the kind of people around you to support you and all that. The pay is pretty good and it's steady.
It is.
As opposed in other places where it isn't so steady. But there's some downsides too. And one of the reasons why I ultimately got out of big pharma and corporate America is because there's not a whole lot of security there, right? So the companies they can do well. A lot of, as everybody knows, as companies goes on here, they tend to get bought out, right? Mm-hmm. The more successful a company is, especially maybe a small to medium sized company, they get bought out by a bigger conglomerate. And if you're a redundancy, then you're looking for another job. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that happened to me on 2 occasions where I worked for the company for a bunch of years. I made them a lot of money. I did well myself too, but you don't have that longer term stability, which you'd like to, because you don't make the decisions. You're not the one deciding, okay, yeah, let's sell the company and let's cash out. So that was ultimately the deciding factor for me.
Yeah, no, that's somewhat of a similar track as you did. Obviously, when I left school, I worked in software sales for a number of years. Then decided to get into medical after I think it was about 7 years in software sales, and I enjoyed it. I'll be honest with you. For the same reasons I went. I wanted a job. I didn't want to go move back home with mom and dad. I don't think they wanted me to move back home either. Definitely not. So got my own place, got a good job, and it was a sales job. And it just happened to be something I answered in the paper when we were in college, and I got it. I had no idea what it was.
Newspapers, remember those?
Yeah, remember newspapers. Yeah, yeah. And I typed up my resume on my word processor. Yep. And I got this gig in sales, and I sort of stumbled upon it. I didn't really plan on getting into sales. My father always said that should be something you do because you like to talk and all this other stuff. He goes, you can make a good living in it. So, made the decision to go into sales. Loved it, and what I found was over the years, no matter what the product, whether it was selling, staplers or software or, trocars in the medical space, whatever it was just this same skill set of sales could be reapplied, right? So I learned a lot as I went from company to company to company. I learned how to take rejection. I learned how to prospect. I learned how to ask open-ended questions. And then I wore a number of different hats. I'm sure you did as well, as you kind of go from company to company to company. I think for some people who are listening to this, it's the corporate thing, you can really learn a lot, right? You're given a lot of resources. You get a chance to sort of screw up on someone else's payroll, so to speak.
Sure. And get good training.
Yeah, you get very good training and, enjoy the benefits of working for a big organization. But eventually you get to a point where you're like, okay, no matter what I sell, it just take it away. And whether I'm selling iPads or I'm selling, microphones, I know how to sell it. But I got to a point, honestly, where I got sick of seeing the compensation and the dollar and the revenue that I was bringing in versus what my paycheck looked like. I was sick of being capped out where it should be for every widget sold, I make this. And that it wasn't adding up to me.
Gotta go like this, right?
Yeah, you go up and then you flatten out, and it was literally like you had to decode the compensation plan. I know you used to write them.
That's the worst. Yeah, that was the worst.
Yeah, and you have to figure it out, and you would literally do things like sandbag and wait till the next month or quarter to put things in. I know everyone listening can relate to that, just as in a way to sort of defunk the compensation plan to make the most money as possible.
It's no fun when you get a compensation plan and it's 25 pages long.
Yeah,
right.
You literally have no idea.
Literally, it's like you have to get a coder ring to figure out what it is.
You do.
Yeah.
You do. And I got sick of that. And I said, well, wait a second. There's got to be a better way. And then, and then I obviously at that point made a decision to sort of step into the independent space. But Chaz, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all for all the reasons that you're mentioning is kind of the reason why I didn't go there. I mean, out of college, it's a tough decision to make to go independent immediately, right? You're talking about zero income, zero training, zero track record with anything. What I did know is that you can't cage a cheetah, right? From that perspective, I don't work well.
So you're a cheetah
in some ways, right? Because I don't work well with others, right?
He's a cheetah.
I don't. If I see an inefficiency, I have to call it out. I don't talk real well. I don't play the politics game, and maybe those are personal character flaws. But I think part of that too makes us very effective when it comes to working for yourself, because the things that you guys are mentioning, even moving, a ton of sales reps we talk to move quota, or even they've sold too much, and you get punished. Again, in what planet do you outperform the specifications set forth to you, and then the rules change not in your favor?
Yeah,
I can't. I can't subscribe to it. So for me, it was a different track, but at the same time, I think those are the same traits that have made us, pretty strong when it comes to the independent space.
So, why sales for you? Like, what was it about sales? I know you're around that growing up, but what was it about a career in sales that sort of intrigued you?
I mean, I think there's two things. I think number one, the first thing my dad ever taught me was he said, look around this room, and he'd say everything here at some point was sold to someone. So you just should understand a need, right? And so I think that brings you to point number two, which for me, it's, do I like to talk? Sure. But I also like to listen, right? And so for me, sales is more about listening to a customer and identifying a need, right? And then hearing, how can I fix that? So I'm a problem solver by nature. So I want to understand what the problem is so I can help you fix it. And so when you're solutions driven like that, there's a lot of things you could do with that quality, I think. But I think sales, for me, paired with the ability to speak a little bit, it's also fun too, right? We don't show up every day and know exactly what's going to happen to us. We'll get 10 phone calls today of just total surprises.
We rarely do we?
Oh, we rarely do. And part of that's the frustration, but for me, it's exciting.
It's not the same monotonous thing that you do over and over and over. You're not in a factory just something something every
day. Banging widgets out.
Yeah.
Pulling a lever.
Yeah. Pulling a lever. Right. Yeah. No, agreed. Yeah, because that's the beauty of sales, but it's also the frustrating side of it, right? I mean, and it doesn't matter what career you go in. I mean, I don't care what it is that you do. You don't love everything about it, right? There is good, there's bad, and there's ugly in no matter what we do. So when you look at what we, when you were working, spilling fribbles, and you were a line judge for volleyball, and I was sleeping with my clothes on, so I go to work. Those are all the downside of the job. I mean, there's some upsides to them, right? Sure. 25% off ice cream,
absolutely,
not a bad gig, right?
Not so bad. So, company cars aren't so bad.
Yeah, and I had my own benefits. I didn't have to go get my own insurance. Those types of things are definite benefits and perks of having we'll call it a corporate job where you don't work for yourself. Mm-hmm. But then we all decided to come independent, right? We all made that decision. You started there. Which is brave. I honestly think that's very brave.
Very brave, yeah.
But it's also good because I think he hasn't seen, he hasn't gotten used to the fact that he doesn't have those rails of structure around him. So he had to learn from the beginning, like a cheetah or a puma, whatever animal you decided you were, that you have to just adapt and evolve into the situation that you're in, right? Where I think unfortunately people get so used to the corporate structure, they decide to jump into independence and then what happens?
It's like getting hit with a frying pan in the face.
That sounds about right. Yeah, it is. I mean, what have you found from the people that jump from, corporate to independent? What's their biggest challenge? Like, what do they struggle with the most?
I think there's,
before we get into the good side.
No, 100%. I think it's two things. I think all of a sudden, you mentioned one thing, and that's being reliant on somebody else, whether it's their manual or their manager or a website or Salesforce.com. They get so reliant because a lot of these guys are out in their car, they're on an island, and yes, they have support, but they're still kind of working on their own. Sure. And so you find these things you cling on to because they feel safe, right? So all of a sudden, the safety's gone. Well, in our space, safety really doesn't exist. So it's that they're clinging for things. So in that desperation, they may cling to the wrong individual, the wrong vendor, the wrong product, because they just want something to grab onto. Right. So I think that's the biggest problem that I see. And problem number two, I think, is more along the lines of expecting things to come when you should know that they're just not. Right. Do you understand what I'm saying about that?
No, what do you mean by that?
So for example, if I'm expecting people to act a certain way, it's almost you're acting as if, or you're acting upon the precedent that people are always going to say what they say they're going to do. And in our space, we know that's not the case. We know people set false expectations all the time. That's just not our space. That's
you will be paid on Friday.
Yeah, and money never shows. So they almost cling to these words, because I think in the corporate environment you can trust, because there is accountability. In our space, who's holding people accountable?
Nobody. But Joe, do you want to expand upon this more?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of things, right? So the first thing I think I'd go to would be training, right? A lot of people get the corporate training. I know when I first started my first job, went away for 2 weeks and got some really good in-depth training. With this, you're maybe send an email with a PDF that may be good, may be bad, may have old information in it, and people go out there and try to sell that to doctors they have relationships with, and they put their relationship with them on the line, because they're in a lot of cases giving bad information or half truths or incomplete information. And the product or service doesn't turn out to be exactly what it's as advertised. And they spend a lot of time trying to build those relationships up, and then all of a sudden the doctor gets burned, or the product isn't what it was, like I said, and it could be a bad situation.
Yeah, and I think what happens with corporate too is we get situations where, I mean, if you're a corporation, you're trying to drive revenue, right? I mean, really any business, you're trying to do that. But they're trying to create almost the same widget, right? They want the person to, sometimes, have the similar look, drive the same car, or wear the same outfit. So there's consistency. But they also want them to all think the same way, right? And they also want them to say off the script. And what you end up creating is you do create a very uniform type of environment, but then you also create a series of robots of individuals, I think, that unfortunately can't think for themselves. And you and I manage in the corporate space.
I definitely agree with
we'd
that.
have individuals come in the room and they'd say, "Hey, how do I do this?" I'm like, "How do you think you should do this?" Right? And then if they actually stopped and thought about it, they understood. So it's the ability to think freely, I think.
It's having that. I think it's having that safety net that you can ask your manager, you can ask your, somebody else in the training department or the accountability department, whatever it may be.
I think it comes down to creativity, right? So when you come in the independent space, it's not like you're handed a manual and here's your list of doctors, here's who you have to call, and this is what you have to say, this is how you drop it off, sign this pad. There's none of that, right? You literally are given, here's your product, sell it. Good luck, right?
Well, I mean, even before that, what product do you sell? I mean, how do they go out there and find the right
that's
product
the other
first?
thing.
Right? I mean, that's even before the product,
Most
right?
people just stumble into it, right? They don't have a place to go where they can find vetted, true opportunities that are nice and clear and concise.
Sure.
But you're right. What am I going to sell, and how am I going to sell it? Right? You're not, like you said, not given formalized training, or a lot of direction. It's kind of the wild, wild west, as we like to kind of joke about.
And Joe just triggered, I think we talked about this a little bit, a couple weeks ago. It's almost like the telephone game when you're kids, right? Because we're degrees removed from the actual truth, right? So a vendor may say something, the sky is blue, okay? By the time it gets to Derek and then it gets to Joe, remember we were playing this when we were kids, right?
It's green.
You don't know, now all of a sudden pharmacogenetic testing is for who knows what, right? The science isn't accurate. Nobody scrubbed it. Again, no accountability.
Yeah.
So you're only as good as the information you're receiving. And now what are you doing? Well, you're just repeating what you were told.
Yep.
Well, again, that chain of information, it gets broken down in who knows how many ways.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's like when you hear somebody has we're supposed to get 2 inches of snow this weekend. By the time I tell it to you, and you had a couple inches, and you had a few more, it's like 7 feet, right?
Exactly right.
So same thing. People have the tendency to exaggerate, especially in this space, right? Because it's very much we use the term smash and grab. Right, you saw with compounding, it is all about who has the best deal, where you have to work the least amount and make the most amount of money.
Sure.
Tell me a place on this planet where that's usually a credible situation, where I don't have to work and I'm going to make a whole heck of a lot of money.
Sure.
Yet for some reason, people think you come to independence, and that's what it is, and they don't realize it's just a bunch of smoke and mirrors. There are those opportunities for smash and grab. But
there's good opportunities out there too, but you have to vet them. You have to find out what the right ones are. You have to
vet them, but if it quite often is, if it's too good to be true, usually is.
Yes, no question.
Right? So, talk about that for a second about, kind of that transition, and speak about it from compounding, because I think compounding ruined the space, and really what the space is really about, what it really means, what's the essence of carrying a bag in the independent space?
I mean, I think for when we sit here and talk about in this context, I think it's about, first of all, identifying the products that fit the specialties you feel comfortable with. So like for me, it's about, first of all, let me do a little bit of self-inventory. Let me understand, what am I good at? Okay. And things I've sold in the past, where do those line up with things that I can pair that with as well? So I'm almost taking inventory of skill sets, call points, how much do I want to work, right? And let's be realistic about that this time, okay? Not go drop a bunch of scripts off and be a millionaire, okay?
Right.
Okay, because we saw so many millionaires that never deserve to be them in the space that you're referencing.
Overnight entrepreneurs.
No doubt about it. And also geniuses, right?
Oh, of course.
Okay, so I
Money
think
will make you feel that way.
that's correct. So part of that is, again, finding what am I good at? And then finding those products, but also vetting the people. Like, where did we go where just the vendor can speak for themselves, but the person doesn't all of a sudden matter? Like for me, when we go pick vendors, what's the first thing we look at? Well, who's the CEO? Can we meet him? Can we have a meal with him? Can we shake his hand? Can we look him in the eye? Because again, at the end of the day, that guy's decisions are going to affect our livelihoods, right? Yeah. And no doubt about it. Sure. Joe talked about it earlier. In corporate, somebody makes a decision up top and you're just at the mercy of it. Well, it's a little bit the same here a little bit, right? If that guy makes a bad decision and our income is tied to that, like, so again, people, self-inventory, these are all things you can do prior to even making any of these decisions.
Yeah. What about the regulation? That's the part that always scared me, is that in this space, you work for a corporate organization, you assume that the powers that be at top with their legal team and with their HR administration are doing everything button up. As I'm sure we've all, you pick up a Wall Street Journal now and again. It's not always the case.
Not always the case.
Not always the case at all.
No.
But you expect that. And I think, unfortunately, to go back to those robotic reps that I think, and I was one of these guys, right? You leave the corporate world, you come in, you realize you can make some money, and then you realize, like, well, wait a second. They may not be telling the truth, and that guy just made that up, and that brochure looks like it was made in by their daughter. Yeah.
It's in Microsoft Word. Yeah,
and it's you start to find real quick that it's you really got to scrub the information in this space, especially on the regulatory side, because again, you talk about the whole telephone game. People assume, it's okay to pay your doctor, and next thing I tell you that, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess it's different over here, and then people were doing that. So with the reality, it's no different than corporate. We got to follow the same rules and laws over here, right?
Yeah, you have to do your due diligence. You have to check out the opportunity, and you can't just trust what people say. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality of the game. Right?
Talk about the trust for a second. Like, talk about the good and the bad that you've seen in the independent space. Maybe feel free to give an example of.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I won't go into specifics, but there's been cases where I've heard about an opportunity, and you said it kind of sounds too good to be true, and you find out at the end that it's not all it was built up to, right? So whether the money isn't what it should be, or the product doesn't do what it said it should do, or it's as easy for the doctor or his or her staff to do that, it just doesn't live up to what the person said, right? And you really have to vet those opportunities, whether it's you're dealing directly with a company or you're dealing with a distributor that's bringing it to you. You have to do your own research. Whether it's doing Google searches or talking to people that have sold it before, or talking to doctors that have sold it, and really find out what the true experience is before you put your name and your reputation and your relationships on the line. Because ultimately, it's you. There's not a company that XYZ company. It's now you. It's Joe Rabus or Derek Peterson or Chaz Bagwell that's putting their name on the line and representing this opportunity for some shadowy figure that maybe you don't know that well, right?
That's true. Ultimately, the fall is on you at the end of the day.
It is.
Right?
And I think that's the burden that makes it exciting, though, right? I mean, it's like that very burden. If I walked into every opportunity knowing that me as a man would be hurt, my reputation would be hurt if this fails, I think we'd look at a lot of these products and services a lot different.
I mean, that's what we do every day, isn't it?
No question about it. No, but I don't think more people need to see it like that, right? More people need to literally view it like that.
That's how you have to approach it.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Don't just get too hot because something sounds so awesome.
Because eventually you will get burned if you don't do that.
No question about it.
Yeah, I mean, you will get burned in this space. I mean, it's almost a given, right? It's going to happen. That's how you learn. Just like you get burnt in any other aspect of your life, it allows you to sort of open your eyes and realize that you really need to know who you're talking to, develop that relationship, and develop that trust. And I talked about, I think, in the first podcast, we've kissed a lot of frogs over the years in order to learn that. And all that being said, we'll call it the ugly side of the business. We obviously all made decisions to move inside of this. Like, what is it why are we still here, and why do we like it so much?
I mean, I think it's exciting. I mean, we're talking about new technology. For us, some of our days look like Shark Tank. I mean, we're getting pitched on the newest products and services in this space.
You're Mr. Wonderful, by the way.
Whether they're, DNA
You're
related.
Closer to him than I am.
Whether they're, we'll call them science oriented. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. Fixing all kinds of problems in our world. The technology that we're seeing is so exciting. But I think the other piece, being a former ball player, is I like the aspect that. I like the aspect of the best players playing, right? I mean, if you're talking about the best 9 are going to be on the field, that's what I got told my whole life, right? So part of that is like, you got to elevate your game to be the best, or you just ride the freaking pine. And so again, that talk track may turn some people off, but I think that's also, for me, the same thing that scares most people is exciting as hell for me, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
And not to mention, you take the excitement of never knowing what the day holds, to having some of the best products and services in your hand, to knowing that you're going to help the patient at the end of the day. Man, like, you go work a corporate gig, you sell maybe a couple products, and you're stuck. Like, it's gotta feel scary. Again, never done it, but I'm not getting stuck anywhere. I need to know I'm gonna have all those products and services, if I need them, for my clients at my fingertips. I'm gonna do it in a fashion that's gonna be better than most.
It's actually less scary if you think about it, right? Everything's all about perspective. So you can look at it, you work for a corporate organization, you're given the products, you're given the car, you're given the benefits. Now that sounds good. What they giveth, they can also take
that comes with a cost.
away,
That's right? Absolutely.
And they're in charge of ultimately what you sell, when you sell, and what you're getting paid, right? When they give you that 25-page comp plan. However, when you work for yourself, right, and you understand the environment you're playing in, and you really create, make your own adventure, you can do your own thing. So what about you? Same question.
Yeah, no, I mean, what I was thinking about the whole time is you control your own destiny, right? Unfortunately, as I said before, I've gotten burned a couple times working for the big companies, and that's why I'm here. But what I love about each and every day, and what gets me up, is that myself and my 2 partners here, we control what we do each and every day. If we decide to go in this direction, it's for a reason. We think about it, we vet it out, and then we go in that direction. There's nobody else that's deciding that. It's just the 3 of us right here. And that's what gets me excited. That's what I like about it. And we can control it. We can be nimble. We can be flexible. If we see something change in the market, we can go another direction. But I really like that control over it. It's not some overlord up there saying, no, go out here and sell this product that may be dated, maybe old technology, maybe not the best option for the patients. We can decide that, and that's really what gets me out of bed and what excites me about this.
Let me just touch on one thing before you go, because that brings up a point. I mean, my wife, as you guys know, is having our first baby, come January, right? There's
who's the father?
There's freedom in knowing that, guess what? Like, I'm going to be at his ball games, right? I'm going to be at his school events, right? I mean, I grew up watching my dad, God bless him, work 80 hours a week since I can remember, and wasn't at a lot of things because he was trying to provide for our family. Sure. Yeah. So that comes with a cost, and the cost was he just couldn't be there at some things, and I was fine with that. But also, I think there's a beauty to letting your family know, you know what? Like, Dad's gonna be home for dinner tonight, and Dad, and all of that comes with, again, responsibility, but that's also exciting. I mean,
sure. It is. I mean, there's sacrifice on either side, right? If you work for the man, so to speak, you have defined hours, right? And a lot of times you can leave your job at work.
You shut your computer at 5 o'clock or 5:30.
You shut it down. You punch out. You're done, right? When you work for yourself, you're always on, but you can decide when you're on, right? If I want to start sending emails from 10 to midnight.
In most cases.
Yeah, for the most part. You have some autonomy.
Sure.
Now, for me, I mean, it really resonates with what you guys said. It's the same for me. And I use, to use an athletic analogy, as a triathlete, when you swim, we swim in open water, right? So as a swimmer, I never decided to swim on the swim team. I didn't find the idea of sitting inside of a lane with 2 ropes and a defined distance on how far I had to go and a direction I had to go is something that was appealing to me. I've always been one that wanted to use creativity to understand a space and be the person who's dropped in the middle of the water, right? And making a decision if I want to swim that way or if I want to swim that way. And I go as far as I want. But in either case, you can still drown, right? Sure. There's risk in the pool, right? But you got that little bit where you can put your feet on the floor if you want to. But what happens is when you go out in the middle of the water, you just become, while it might be a little bit of a struggle, like you can't see the horizon, you can't see where the end game is. Over time, you learn how to become a better swimmer because you have no choice, right? You eat what you kill. And if you don't have that mindset, sometimes you just got to be thrown, you got to just jump and kind of grow your wings, right, on the way down. And that's what making the jump and taking the risk and taking the chance and putting all fear aside and saying, you know what, I'm just going to do this because I'm just going to figure it out. I figured it out enough when I learned how to sell this widget to this widget to this widget. screw it. I'm going to sell my own widgets and I'm going to figure it out. And that's what we've done. And it's been the most refreshing thing. I could never go back to corporate. Like I would rather go to prison than go to corporate again.
Most of your analogies are a little iffy, but that one was pretty strong.
I nailed that.
I love that one. I actually love that.
The pool one or the prison one?
Neither. The one where he gets dropped in the water, he's got to find his way out. I like that one.
He gives a lot of analogies.
I like that one.
I speak in metaphors. Yeah. It's like a leprechaun. So I listen, at the end of the day, guys, whether you make a decision to stay in corporate or whether you make a decision to, come complete independent
or dip your toe in, like how we started.
Yeah. Exactly. Like we all started that way. You started that way. Yeah. You didn't. I did. So you got choices, right? And what would be the number one piece of advice you'd give to somebody who's thinking about trying it? They're thinking about trying it. We already know the people that are in it. They understand. They can relate to what we're talking about. But what about the people that are like, man, I'm thinking about it?
Be honest with yourself, right? Because I think, first of all, if you're already thinking that question, you're already dissatisfied with what you're doing, right? Yep. So I love when I say something, I know Joe's on the same page. He just gives me that look like, yeah, okay, yes. So I can roll with this one. So be honest with yourself, because again, if you're already saying this, there's dissatisfaction. I remember learning in business school, like there are so many other things that make an employee satisfied than money. Okay, it's like 6th or 7th on the motivators, the intrinsic motivators. Okay,
you're right.
So be honest with yourself, and what I mean by that is, first of all, make sure that you really want it, right? I think a lot of us, we watch these like multi-level marketing videos or these really, really corny videos where some guy pulls up in a Lambo, right, with nice shoes on, and how he got there was, he worked for himself. That's 0.5% of the time. Okay, the truth is, this is a grind. It's a struggle, but it's highly rewarding. Mm-hmm. And so again, when I talk about this true self-assessment, that's the best piece of advice I could possibly give to make sure this is exactly for you. A lot of people think it is, right? But for most, I really would want them to be honest with themselves.
Well, they got to know that with any type of change, there's going to be some pain, right? Sure. And just realize when you make a decision to do it, you got to stick with it. When it gets hard, that's not when you quit. It's on the other end of that. Pain is where like the beauty is, right? And you're going to struggle no matter what you do, right? Yeah. No matter what you do. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I would say, I think the first and foremost, what Chaz said, be honest with yourself. But once you've done that and you've answered the question, is this something I really want to do, whether you're going to dip your toe in? I'd probably recommend, if you have a corporate gig, dip your toe in and kind of see how it goes. That's what I did. That's what Derek did. But once you do that, make sure you vet the opportunity and the person you're working with, the vendor you're working for, vet them as thoroughly as possible, right? As I said before, you don't want to ruin those relationships because that'll really hurt you, especially if you have those relationships in your corporate gig. So I would vet it as thoroughly as possible. Talk to other people that are selling it. Talk to other doctors that might be using it. Ask for some references. Do your research on the internet. Do some Google searches on the people you're working with. There's a lot of good people out there, but unfortunately, there's a lot of kind of shady people out there too. And I wouldn't want to get burned on that, especially your first time.
Yeah, for sure. Because the reality is, kind of going back to what I said a second ago, there's going to be some pain. And I guess the biggest advice for me would be know your outcome. Right? So know why it is that you're going into it. Know what it is that you really want. And this kind of goes a little bit back to what you're saying. Like, is it money? Are you sure? Or is it freedom and autonomy that you think money buys you? Sure. Right? Mm-hmm. Is it, maybe it's not money, maybe it's actually control, right? Maybe you're sick of being told what to do. Sure. I think a lot of times people look at the surface feeling and emotion that they're having and they don't really understand what the true root is. Like, break it down, like know why you're going into it and then really understand that, because once you hold on to that, you got it like in your grasp. That is what you continue to look back upon to say, hey, that's why I'm doing this. That's why when I get phones hung up on me, I get doors slammed in my face, I get burnt, I struggle, I'm frustrated. They're going to happen. It's going to come just like anything else, going back to the reason why most people quit before they get there. As long as you have your outcome and why you're doing it, then you can hold on to it to get through it. So
yeah, and I think we can wrap up with this. If somebody came to us and finally said one day that we were the reason, like this podcast, even they were teetering, right, and the med rep was why they jumped in. I couldn't imagine a more rewarding thing that we could be possibly doing. I mean, if you could talk somebody, if we were the reason why you could get them to at least dip their toe or jump head first, I just think that would be awesome. That's why we've set out to kind of discuss these type of topics.
That's why we're doing it.
That's it.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks,
pretty
guys.
good.
Yeah.
That was really
Cheetah.
Yeah, thanks.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yep.
All right.